All right, welcome to Mealtime News. What's going on, guys? This is the first episode of Mealtime News. I'm your host, Henry. Structure of this show, basically just going to talk about politics, news, stuff that I think is funny, stuff that I think is interesting, for like 30-ish minutes a day. I always like to have something to watch while I eat meals, kind of a loner in that regard. So thought I would offer my version of kind of something to watch. So if you guys like to tune in, hit the follow button, hit the subscribe button, whatever it is. And I'll be posting these videos every day. So the first thing I wanted to talk to you about was the Republican debates, or debate rather, which happened last night in Milwaukee, featuring 8 candidates. Kind of top level headline from that was Vivek Ramaswamy, no holds barred, goes after everybody. It's like David versus Goliath, except David is Vivek and Goliath is the 7 other candidates on the Republican stage. So Vivek basically, the person with whom he primarily argued was Mike Pence. They kind of had the biggest spat back and forth of the whole night, or rather going on and on back and forth. They were 2 of the people who talked the most, but also Vivek really got into it with Chritie, saying that, he got Obama elected, which seems not very true. Also got into it with Nikki Haley, saying that, Nikki Haley was going to serve on the board of Raytheon, one of these big defense contractors. But Vivek basically just unleashed attacks on everybody. And he made a name for himself, mainly as the Trump surrogate. I mean, most of what he was saying was just what Donald Trump would say, maybe sans the nicknames, and with a little more eloquent of a spin, but more or less he was just a stand-in for Trump. So all of the anger that other people had about Trump was similarly directed at Vivek, because Vivek stood for a lot of the stuff Trump stood for. Trump praised Vivek after the debate on, Truth Social, saying something along the lines of, Vivek really stood out to me in this debate because he called me the greatest president of the 21st century, which, by the way, is a pretty short list, like 4 presidents of the 21st century so far. So, Vivek is really, it comes off as Vivek is not running for president so much as he's running to be a part of the Trump administration in some capacity, whether that be vice president or a cabinet position or something along the lines of that. But he did make a name for himself, and he really did kind of solidify himself as probably the second choice among all of the really big Trump fans. As far as some of the other standouts of the debate, Nikki Haley, who's been polling not super highly, kind of in the single digits, low single digits actually, has had a decent night. She did better than expectations, but ultimately probably not quite good enough to get her, much past, or rather really deep into the primary. I still think her candidacy probably has its days numbered. But the New York Times did put out a story that Democrats think Nikki Haley would be one of the hardest candidates for them to beat come the general election. So who knows? But the primaries are set up in such a way that the candidate that may do the best in the general election is often not the one that wins the primary, with maybe the exception of Barack Obama, because he was such a widely popular president. And you go back, Ronald Reagan was also widely popular in the general and won the primary. But typically it's the more extreme candidates that tend to do well in the primary elections. And the reason for that is that the primary elections, the only people who sign up to vote in primaries and who register to a political party at all, tend to be the most ideological of the voters, right? They tend to be the most hardcore Democrats or the most hardcore Republicans. And so what you get is this kind of this skew of where public opinion is as far as what the votes show, compared to the general election, where you have all of these people who, either aren't particularly loyal to one party or another and thus don't register for a party, or who are explicitly independent and don't vote in a primary at all. So Nikki Haley did well. Ron DeSantis performed just about at expectations. He's another candidate who in the past has made the point that he would do very well in a general election. Or that was kind of his case against Trump, that he would beat Biden, whereas Trump would again lose to Biden as he did in 2020. And, you know, he made that case. He really harped on his record. I thought he did well. There was, and I'll put up a picture on the screen, but there were all these times where he just had this really weird smile, like before he started speaking, where he was just smiling at the camera. And it seemed very forced in this kind of inhuman way. But, I mean, ultimately his answers were good. They were well rehearsed. Chritie did fine. Chritie has probably the most famous debate performance in the past, you know, couple Republican primaries, where he took out Marco Rubio in an insane way. So Marco Rubio just kept reusing this line. It was something along the lines of like, we have to dispel with the myth that Obama doesn't know what he's doing. He knows exactly what he's doing. And then Chritie was like, oh, stop repeating this like pre-canned 30-second speech. And then in response to that, Rubio said the exact same line. And he did that like 4 or 5 times.
But I would add this: let's dispel with this fiction that Barack Obama doesn't know what he's doing. He knows exactly what he's doing. He is trying to change this country.
You see, everybody, I want the people at home to think about this. That's what Washington, D.C. does. The drive-by shot at the beginning with incorrect and incomplete information, and then the memorized 25-second speech that is exactly what his advisors gave him.
And then you stayed there for 36 hours, and then he left and came back to campaign. See, those are the facts. Here's the bottom line. This notion that Barack Obama doesn't know what he's doing is just not true.
There it is.
He knows exactly what he's doing.
The memorized 25-second speech.
Well, that's the reason
everybody.
why.
It was just the biggest debate meltdown. So Chritie, you know, did not do that last night in his performance, but he did well. I mean, he stood up for Pence pretty notably when Pence came under fire for you know, not supporting Trump's actions on January 6th. He said, we owe, you know, Mike Pence a debt of gratitude because Mike Pence, you know, stood up for the Constitution. He didn't let his temporary political incentives get in the way of his longstanding oath to uphold the Constitution. So I thought he gave a good performance, probably about a B. Mike Pence is really kind of the evangelicals candidate. He is the one that's the most explicitly and ardently pro-life. He has the Trump record to both support him and to defend. I mean, a lot of what he was attacked about was how much the Trump-Pence administration spent under COVID, how much they spent in the years preceding the COVID pandemic. And so obviously that's not super appealing to Republican voters, so he had to defend that. But also he could, you know, play on some of the strengths that he had in the Trump administration that he saw, such as like building the border wall and reducing crime to the extent that they did. So Pence did fine. Pence probably gets B plus in the range of that. Asa Hutchinson. Who knows how he got on the debate stage? Well, I do know actually exactly how he got on the debate stage. So Asa Hutchinson needed 40,000 people to vote or to donate to his campaign, 40,000 individual donors before he could become a member of the primary debate. And so he wasn't there, like, you know, a week before the debate. So the way he accomplished this was he basically paid college students like $20 if they would donate $1 to his campaign. And he got it, like he got the 40,000, but he spent all of that money for him to put on what was an entirely forgettable debate performance. I mean, really, he didn't stand out at all. He was kind of right there with Doug Burgum, where people were like, why are we, I mean, these people have no chance in the Republican primary. Why are we spending any amount of time focusing on them? So, you know, he was there, he was present, didn't really make exceptional points, didn't really have any standout moments. Tim Scott did fine. Tim Scott is more of a soft-spoken guy. There was one moment where he kind of chided the other candidates on stage for being childish, which certainly probably appeals to some people. But I think right now, like, the id of the Republican base is not, you know, let's have less confrontation. I think it's let's have more confrontation. I mean, they elected Donald Trump in 2016, so, and, you know, renominated him in 2020, even though that was kind of a given. So I don't think they're trying to shy away from confrontation. All this is to say, did any candidates do well enough to separate themselves from Trump in the primary? Because Trump didn't show up, right? Trump did this interview with Tucker Carlson. I think the answer is no. I think if anyone really was outstanding, it was Vivek, and it doesn't even seem like Vivek is running against Trump. It seems like Vivek is running to be a part of Trump's team, not running, you know, in competition with Trump. So I don't think this really changes much. We'll see as polls start to roll out over the next week, kind of how this changes the game, but really doesn't seem like it's going to shake up the primary battle too much. Moving on, Trump was just arrested in Fulton County, which is insane. And the insane part isn't that he kind of was booked and processed. I mean, that has happened before with some of his other indictments. But they took a mugshot of Trump, which is one of the funniest pictures I think I've ever seen of Trump kind of looking at the camera with his like classic Trump face, like very angry. I think obviously trying to seem tough. And it's just hilarious. So let's go through the like 4 Trump indictments and kind of walk through them one by one, see which has the most teeth and which Trump should probably fear the most and which are kind of the most specious. So the first one, the one that came out chronologically first, was this one with Alvin Bragg, who's the district attorney in Manhattan, and he charged Trump with these hush money or with charges relating to the hush money payments that he paid Stormy Daniels. So for those of you who don't know, Stormy Daniels was this porn star who Trump had a relationship with, and then, you know, that was potentially going to come out during the 2016 campaign. So he paid Stormy Daniels some money and then, you know, falsified allegedly some business records to cover that up. And, you know, they're claiming that it was an illegal contribution to his own campaign. These are kind of widely considered to be the allegations with the least teeth, the ones on which Trump is, you know, least likely to get convicted. But ultimately it's New York. There are a lot of Democrats in New York. There are a lot of people who don't like Trump in New York. So it's possible that a jury finds him guilty, regardless of the fact that, you know, many of the legal critics are saying these were some of the weakest charges. So the second one, and kind of flipping to the other end of the spectrum where it seems like Trump most clearly did do the crime, is the classified documents case, where he had classified documents that were stored at Mar-a-Lago. The FBI raided, they found the documents, and what really kind of killed Trump on this one is that tape came out that was published by, I think it was the New York Times, where he basically admitted on tape to doing the crime. He said something to the effect of like, I had the documents that I know are classified, like intent. I want to show them to you, knowing that I'm not supposed to show classified documents to you. And also, you know, knowledge of the problem, saying, I know that I could have declassified these documents as president, but I didn't, so now they're still classified. So he on tape basically hits every like element that's necessary to prove that crime. So that seems to be the one that has like the most potential for Trump to face some legal troubles. We'll see. I mean, there is a serious possibility that Trump ends up at some point during this election cycle in jail, which is one of the craziest things that's ever happened in American politics. So we'll keep our eye on that. We'll see if that happens. But the Florida one is, I think, legally speaking, at least, the riskiest one for the Trump campaign. So the third one is D.C. The federal special prosecutor, Jack Smith, brought charges in D.C. Those were kind of civil rights charges. Critics have said, and again, I'm not a lawyer, so just relaying the best information that I've read, but critics have said that this is kind of an odd path to indictment and that, you know, it's not super common. I mean, I guess none of this is common. Ultimately, they're charging a former president, but that trying to say, it's like a civil rights law about depriving people of a right to vote. And so trying to get them on that, we'll see. I mean, that one also has been criticized as having kind of a worse chance in a court of law. And then finally, there's this case in Georgia for which Trump was just booked, got his mugshot taken in Fulton County. And that one is charged by the district attorney, Fani Willis. And Fani Willis is charging Trump under the RICO Act, which is a racketeering law. So those got pretty famous when they were trying to address organized crime. And the reason they needed a RICO law, basically allowing them, allow them to go after the heads of these organized crime families who may not have been, you know, directly involved in the killing of somebody or the intimidation of a witness, but like really clearly like were part of it and were party to it and knew about it. And so this RICO statute or RICO law under which Trump is being charged effectively allows Fani Willis to kind of weave this story about Trump being more or less the mastermind behind all of these illegal actions that others under him took. And so there's, you know, a reasonably good shot that Trump gets charged on this. And, you know, they're working, like, one of the crazy things is that, or it's not crazy, I mean, it's a good legal strategy by Fani Willis, is to try to, you know, flip the people that are under Trump with the potential for jail time. So, you know, she'll go to somebody who probably was the one that did something that is either borderline illegal or illegal and say, look, we're going to prosecute you. You're going to go to jail. And unless you flip on Trump, we're going to do this. But if you cooperate with us, you know, we won't prosecute you and there's no risk of you going to jail. And this puts a ton of pressure on the people under Trump to continue being loyal to him. I mean, if they're facing jail time, it's pretty reasonable to think that some of these people may end up turning against Trump. And one other thing to make matters a little worse for the Trump team is that Trump isn't paying their legal bills. So a lot of these people are going to have to pay a ton of money to defend themselves. And that just adds, I think, to the incentive structure of a lot of these people to flip on Trump. So that one has a lot of potential for Trump to go to jail as well. I mean, we'll see. It's looking crazy, and we'll see if any of this works out for Trump, and kind of what the reaction is of Republicans and how that ends up going. All right, guys, this has been Mealtime News and Politics. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something. Stay informed. Hit that like and subscribe button, or follow, or whatever it is on any of the given platforms I'm going to post on. Going to try to do this every day from this kind of janky setup. Please subscribe. Maybe the subscription money, if I get enough subscribers, can earn some money. I can buy better desk, better camera, sign to, you know, show the name of the show, all this stuff. But anyway, thank you for tuning in. That's the end of this episode. See you guys tomorrow.